Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, leadership coach, pastor guy, entrepreneur, guy that knows it all, been everywhere twice, John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Well, first of all, I don't know it all, and secondly, I haven't been everywhere twice. Um, but
Uh,
I'm
I was
doing,
looking
I'm
forward to
doing,
your new book, Humility and How I Achieved It in Three Easy Steps. But there you go. It's yet to be written.
yes, humility, with the subtitle "Why I'm So Awesome," right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, Jim, I'm doing well. Been on the road,
Good.
quite a bit,
Yeah.
lately, but it's been fascinating, Jim, as I've been on the road. Um, I've been interacting with a lot of pastors. I mean, just
Yeah.
a lot of pastors
Yeah.
from all over the country, different sized churches, different
Yeah.
denominations, and it's always fascinating what you learn when you just hang out with these
Yeah.
guys for a few
Yeah.
days and what's going on in their world, and some of the things that are going on in their world are tough, and
Yeah.
surprisingly, there's some really good things going on.
Yes,
Uh,
there are. Yes,
in
there
their
are.
in their world, and I really like to talk about that today, the good things that
Yeah.
that we're seeing. Um, I don't know if you subscribe, Jim, to any blogs or podcasts, but sometimes I read the titles of the blogs and the pods, and I find myself wearied by the negative
Yeah.
headlines or the negative
Yeah.
narrative.
Yeah,
We
I'm
all
not
know.
sure if you heard or not, but Christianity no longer exists in America. I'm not sure if you know that or not, but according to the headlines, we've been extinct now for 10 years and just don't know it yet. And I think when the church got involved in politics, then the media got involved in the church, in a different
Yeah,
way. And
yeah,
as long as we're innocent and off to the side and separated, then they'll leave us alone. But I think once you get engaged in any way, there's somebody on one side of a line, somebody on the other side of a line. And so I'm with you. The media, the press, the statistics. There's plenty of bad news to go around. By the way, it's not like they're lying about
yes,
this, but you
right,
can get really discouraged with all the bad news.
yeah. And I think it's easy to point out what's wrong with something. I think that's human
Yes.
nature.
Yeah.
And it's harder, I think, to point out what's good.
Hmm.
And so what I'd like to do today, Jim, is talk about some positive trends
Yeah.
uh, that we're noticing across our network of clients. Our network of clients, by the grace of God, spans 14 different denominations,
Yeah.
and it is
Wow.
spread out across the United States and into Canada, and we're so grateful for that reach.
Yeah.
Um, and I so what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is I'd like to do this in two parts. So
Yeah.
this is episode 159. In the next episode, I'd like to unpack. So I'd like to unpack two today, and then next week unpack two more. Does that sound like a good plan?
2 weeks of good news. I can take that. Yeah, that'd be
All
nice.
right. So here's the four. I'm going to just give the four positive trends we're noticing. I'll just give kind of
Yeah.
like the highlight of it, and then we'll dig in to
Yeah.
the first two. So here's the four things that we've seen uh, happening across our network. One is that the giving of people financially has been
Yeah.
spectacular. That's
It
just been a
has.
beautiful trend. Um, Secondly, there is new growth happening in churches, and
Yeah.
and here's the beauty of it. It's not primarily transfer growth from another church. A lot of growth is represented by people who are new to church. This is their
Yeah.
first go, or they've been away from church for a long time and they're coming back. So we
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
excited about that. The third trend we're seeing that is really cool is simplification.
Hmm.
And I think if we have a hobby horse, that is one of them. That
Yeah.
we are always encouraging leaders to skinny down their playbook, and we're seeing that now, not across the board, but enough to be encouraged about. And then the last trend that we're noticing is there is a renewed focus on health and
Yeah.
well-being, and we're really excited about those. So those are the four
Yeah.
trends that I'd like us to unpack over the next couple of weeks.
Right on. Well, it's just good to have good news. It's funny. You talk to the pastors you talk to. I speak to the pastors I speak to, and I agree with everything you just said. There's almost a surprise in there, like, huh, maybe attendance is down a little, or there's new people that don't yet know how to give, and yet our
Yeah.
funds are doing well. It's healthy.
Yeah.
What is going on? And what are your thoughts? Why do you think that is? Why is giving doing well?
Yeah. Well, before I give you those, I would just say this that
Yeah,
um I would say probably 80 to 90% of the pastors who we work with who since the beginning of the pandemic have told me they're experiencing record levels of giving. Now,
yeah,
that's interesting, right? In light of all of the challenges they've had, uh, for the vast majority of churches, giving hasn't been one of them. And
yeah,
I don't know if that's God just being gracious, if that's maybe that's the answer.
yeah,
But I wonder what you think, Jim. Why do you think
yeah,
that reality? Because I mean, you're still pastoring
yeah.
actively a church. Why do you think that might be?
I think in our situation, it's at least two things. One is the mainstreaming or mainlining of online giving. That it used to
Okay.
be you had to be in the room, you had to remember your checkbook, you had to bring cash, you had to make a decision on the spot before the bucket got to you. And now I think people are making that decision well in advance. It's part of their budget, and because the economy, even during COVID, the government jobs, at home work, $17 an hour at Kentucky Fried Chicken. There was
Yeah.
plenty of money going around. One of the reasons we're in the financial situation and as a nation we're in right now, there was just so much money going around. So people didn't change. If they were not on, we encouraged them to get on because they weren't coming to
Yeah.
church for weeks. Once on, they established an ongoing recurring gift. So it's nice
Yeah.
because a blizzard financially is the same as Easter, financially is the same as the middle of summer, is the same as late fall. So it used to be the ebbs and flows. That's no longer there. There's a real consistent, well over 50% of our giving and well over 50% of our gifts are now online. And I think the
Yeah.
second thing is that the church played a unique role in the world that had value during COVID. If the church was being the church, it was uniquely positioned. We had the Mott Foundation, for example, has never once partnered with a church. It's part of their charter. We do not work with religious organizations because once you work with one, now you're kind of obligated to work with others or you're
Sure.
considered biased. But because we were doing something that they valued, they wrote us a very substantial, one of the largest gifts in the history of our church check so that we could then, because we had the connections and we had the outlets and we had the people and the service and
Hmm.
theirs were shut down, but they saw such a need. So they gave us, you know, six figures to say change the world with this without any. Don't talk about Jesus. Don't talk about God. There was no strings attached. Take care of people. So the church
Yeah.
that was active in caring for their community and online giving, I think, is two of the reasons why
Okay.
giving is doing well.
And so I would say this, if you're leading a church, pastoring a church, and you have not taken that step of implementing online giving, boy,
Boy,
reach out to us and we'll help you figure that out if you
yeah,
need
very
that
simple.
because it's
Yeah,
really you really hit the nail on the head. Jim, I was thinking of a couple of other things too. Why giving really during the pandemic and afterward has just been so good and so consistent.
yeah,
I think the people who abandoned ship during the pandemic probably weren't consistent givers for the most part.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and secondly, I think for those who remained, there was this sense of there was a generosity that I really noticed and appreciated, a sense of duty even, and maybe
yeah,
even like
yeah,
as you said, a miraculous component to it, right? The Mott Foundation
yeah,
never
yeah,
have done that in the past, and so I think as if you're listening today and wondering, well, that's really interesting. What should I do about that? One, I think figure out the online giving piece for sure. Here's another one. I think teaching our people to be properly related to money on a regular
hmm
basis bears long-term fruit.
yes,
It to
yeah,
me, it was beautiful to watch people who had been givers for years step up their giving even more. So I would say this, don't
yeah,
avoid the money issue. You're not
yeah,
helping the people you lead when you ignore it. And so I
Yeah.
would say that would be a takeaway. And here's another takeaway, and I think this is a more philosophical than anything else, is that money is easy for God.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hard for us sometimes, but very easy for him. You know, when you see a huge impact or reduction in the number of people attending, and yet you see the giving not only stay stable, in many instances, Jim, it was going up.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the math shouldn't work like that.
Right.
But in the majority of cases, it is. And you know, I've heard some people say, well, part of the reason is because during the pandemic you couldn't travel as much and people had more money to give away. And you know, I think there's some validity to that. But but look, I think God wants to settle this issue for all of us, you and me, Jim, and everybody listening or
Yeah.
watching today, is that He is an abundant provider with inexhaustible resources. Money is
Yeah.
not hard for Him. And so
Yeah.
those are my thoughts around the giving piece.
Yeah, I think that's, I like the thought of we didn't go to the movies, we didn't go out to eat, we didn't go on vacation, so we had more money. That may have been true to begin with, but if that is true, now that there are movies again, now that we are on vacation eating in restaurants, the giving has not gone down because of those new expenses added back to our lives. So the hope is, like you're saying, they'll learn that planting seeds is a good way to produce, gardens that produce more fruit, that produce more seeds. That would be a wonderful lesson for this generation to have learned. And I think, if at our church we do talk about giving, we do talk about tithing, we talk about offerings and alms and missions, but the umbrella statement is we desire to be a generous community. We want, if we're known for anything, the day of the church being known for what it's against will probably never be over, because we are countercultural to every culture
Mhm.
since the resurrection of Jesus. But we should also be known for what we do, not just for what we don't do. And being generous is one of those great ways. You can fake friendliness. You can't fake generosity. Either you are or you're not. Sacrificial
That's right.
giving and etc. So I think it's a great thing. And again, God will always bring good things out of bad things if we'll let Him. So maybe that's one of the good things that came out of COVID is,
Mhm.
the generosity has been stimulated in the people of God.
Yeah, and I love it. So be encouraged about that. You
Yeah,
know, if
yeah,
you're listening today or watching, here's the second trend, positive trend that we've observed, and that's new growth.
yeah,
Uh, During the heart of the pandemic, church leaders were telling us that they had seen reduction in attendance,
yeah,
anywhere from 30 to 60%. And you know, most of those people that left didn't return,
yeah,
interestingly enough. And you know, Jim, I have two emotions with that. I have, you know, I feel sad in
yeah,
some ways about that. I feel sad for those people in a way
yeah, yeah,
that something happened during that caused them to lose fellowship with other believers. The other emotion I feel is joy. That's really weird.
yeah, yeah,
There's sadness and there's joy, and the joy part of it for me is really related to the leaders. Look,
yeah,
most of the people who left and didn't come back were disproportionately difficult pastor.
yeah,
And so, you know, there was a consumerist mentality
yeah,
there. There was
yeah,
bandwagon almost thought process, uh, a pretending element to that. And those are
yeah,
the hardest people, in my experience, to lead. And
yeah,
and so while I'm sad, there's also a sense of, okay, this group that's left, the new people who are coming, this new growth that is coming, I believe at some level are easier to pastor. Now, Jim, tell me if I'm all wet on that. If I am, you know, I'll
no, no, you're
I'll
right. You're right
withdraw.
on. I've never talked to a grapevine At least I've never heard it talk back to me if I did. But I would imagine pruning is a somewhat unpleasant experience. I would imagine that these things that have grown, there was hopes and dreams attached to them. There was ideas. And imagine when the vine dresser comes along and cuts off certain things, it's an unpleasant experience. But the vine dresser does it because there's more fruit available to the tree if it's more focused. So I
Right.
heard something, I forget where it was or who said it, but Rob Loy actually is the one who said it. He said the church will be smaller, but more effective coming out of COVID. And when he said that, I was in a room full of pastors, and the room went, "Huh, that may be the first good news we've heard associated with the word smaller." But he
Mhm.
was dead on. He was dead on. It's we are getting a lot more done with less, so much so that there's no longer less associated with getting more done. There's actually a different person stayed true to public and corporate worship, a different type of, and I'm not saying those who didn't are awful people or bad Christians are not going to
Understood.
heaven. Zero judgment, because it is a more, we've gotten better at doing ministry through the internet to your home. So stay home. Billy's sick, got the sniffles. Everybody now is one good reason or even a decent excuse away from not going to church. So we've gotten better at saying stay at home because we have this great thing produced for you at home, and everybody's one excuse away. So that's going to happen. So the overall numbers, nobody really knows, because the guy that counts clicks says my church grew from 100 to 10,000. Well, no, you promote it on Facebook, and a click is not a believer, et cetera. So
Right.
I don't think anybody knows how many people are going to their church. I don't think anybody knows what the influence of their ministry is with any certainty anymore,
Yeah.
period. But I'll also say this: the people that are coming are a different sort, and they're a good sort.
Uh-huh.
They are a joy to work with, and they want to get involved. And they're asking. They're not saying, "Why are you asking me for so much?" They're saying, "How can I get involved? How can I give more? How can I serve more?" They're excited about new things, and we've got this great base that stayed faithful, and this great new influx of people that are excited. And
Yeah.
leading through COVID was hard. Leading out of away from COVID has its challenges, but I think we're more fruitful because of, again, the pruning. Not to say that if you don't go to church you're a dead branch. I'm not saying that. Our
Right.
ministry personally through testimony is in a better position now than pre-COVID. And what's missing is the consumer that thought they were there for a product, that complained about the items that weren't on the menu. Those
Right.
guys are long gone. Matter of fact, the wonderful thing is they've all gone to the same church, and they're all that church has exploded in growth. It's like, God bless you. Some people create happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go, and I am happy. I'm happy for those that are here whenever and wherever, and
Yeah.
so all good
And
stuff.
and what I've and just to kind of pick up on that, what pastors are telling me is that, John, I'm not getting the new growth primarily is not from other churches.
Yes,
It's from
yes,
people who have never gone to church, people who are worried about what's going on in the world
yeah,
and decided, man,
yeah,
I better get myself into church.
yeah, yeah,
I got to find answers here. I'm
yeah,
anxious. I'm concerned about the future.
yeah,
And so that's exciting to me that it's not transfer growth.
yes,
And so most of our clients are reporting this trend, and I think that is so exciting. So
yeah,
so if you're listening or watching today, here's a takeaway under this second trend that I really would like you to think about. Prepare for new growth.
yes, yeah.
Prepare,
Please,
prepare for it. I've
yeah,
got a couple ideas, man. Upgrade your guest experience.
yeah,
Uh, if you have to get an outsider to come in and help you with that, just to watch a fresh set of eyes to help observe what happens in your gatherings. Oh, I'm
yeah,
telling you, it'll be any money you spend to do that will be worth its weight in gold because
yeah,
um, because there is a blindness that comes to all of us,
yeah,
no matter how good we are at what we do, the longer we do something. And it's
yeah,
amazing, Jim, when I go to a church, and I try not to always have the consultant hat on. Sometimes I just want to participate, and not think
right,
about stuff. But every once in
yeah,
a while, that hat finds itself on my head. And I think about what what is the guest experience from the time they drive into the parking lot till the time they
Yes.
get into a seat, and then
Yes.
what happens afterwards? Are we making our gatherings understandable to somebody who doesn't know anything about Jesus
Yes.
or doesn't know anything about our church? You
Yes.
know, create space for those new people. Uh,
Yes.
think about them throughout that entire process. Then I think the number one issue of somebody who's coming to a church for the first time is anxiety.
Sure. The
What can
unknown,
we do?
strangers,
Yeah,
new person. What if I stand up when I should have sat down? What if I don't know the words of the songs? What if my kids don't make friends? Absolutely.
100%. And so a great
Yeah.
guest experience reduces that
It's
anxiety.
huge. It's
Um,
huge.
make room for these new people to encounter Jesus.
Yes.
Look, I mean, the bottom line is is this encounter. Man, when people encounter Jesus, their life changes.
Yeah.
Their life
Yeah.
changes. And so make room for that. Do what you and I would just say one other thing. Do what you need to do, pastor, leader, to be fresh in the
Yeah.
pulpit. Let
Yeah.
your preaching and teaching come out of a deep reservoir other than coming out of fumes. And I
Right.
think you know what I mean
I do.
by that. And so, Jim, I'm so excited about this trend. And I want to encourage pastors. Look, you've been through the last 2.5 years have been incredibly complicated and hard. We are seeing a continued uptick in the number of pastors, lead pastors, who are seriously considering quitting. Jim, it's up to 42%.
Yeah.
It was 31% a year ago.
Yeah.
42 and so what we're trying to do today, what hopefully we can accomplish today, is tell you there are good things happening, and
Yes.
they can happen to you, and you can participate in that. Don't let all of the negative headlines uh, discourage you to the point where you think it's hopeless.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not. It's a day of harvest, and you say, "Well, it's not at my church, so I'm more discouraged." Stop. It's planting seeds in good soil always produces something.
That's right.
Watering those seeds in prayer always produces something. It's not. I'm not going to say it's easy, but I'm not going to say it's complicated. Love God, love people, help them find their giftings, release them in them, be a church together, and God will produce an environment that people will be drawn to. And yeah, it's awesome. I understand that if you don't have the grace on your life to be a pastor, it's probably a terrible job, just like a school teacher would be, just
Yeah.
like a police officer would be, or any other thing that it's a calling or it's a terrible job. Those are your two choices. So, but if you are called and you're discouraged, chances are you need a day off. Chances are you need a different rhythm. Chances are you need to hear some good news. Chances are you need a date night with your spouse. Chances are you're exhausted from COVID and everybody's back and wants to go back to work, and you're already exhausted and frustrated and you lost key people. I get all that. But get off social media for a week and see if your attitude doesn't improve. Get in the word of God, get off the news, get on your face, and I'll bet things turn around. So in the meantime, 40, was it 41, 42% are
Yeah.
thinking about
42.
quitting? Okay. This is what I'm shocked at. I'm shocked that 50% of the pastors lied. Because if you're a pastor, you're always thinking about quitting in one form or another. It's Monday. You're exhausted from Sunday. So I get the thought. I mean, I wanted to quit a lot of covenant relationships, children, marriage, congregations, a citizen of the United States. Where we all get exhausted. We all want to quit, but we don't. Those we won't have a 41% turnover in the next year in the pulpit because you're going to be encouraged by something. So let this news encourage you.
Yeah.
God's doing good things. Look at what is right. Look at what is going well. Look at what can happen, and get your eyes off of the war in Russia. You just for a week, just take a
Yeah.
break from the world's every problem in the world, get on your face, walk your community, love Jesus, and I bet you good things start to happen in your heart.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's good, John. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So, Jim, I'd like to have you wrap us up. We'll jump
Okay.
on the other two in episode 160.
All right. Well, here's the deal. For 30 minutes, if you can't find a single thing right in your life, call John. I bet you can find 10 in 30
Well,
minutes.
Jim.
If you're not encouraged, I bet you you can be encouraged by the end of it. If you're suffering in silence, if you're discouraged all alone, if nobody understands, you're believing things that just simply aren't true.
Mhm.
But when you're exhausted, when you're hurt, when you're discouraged, lies become very believable and quitting becomes a very reasonable option. So if you're losing hope, don't lose it. It's okay to have it challenged, but there are friends, there are pastors, there are counselors, there is Converge coaching. If you go to convergecoach.com and press on that button, I'm on a 30-minute conversation with one of the team members. That's a good place to start because maybe there's a legitimate problem we can help you with. Maybe you just need a sounding board to vent. Maybe you need to be encouraged. Maybe you need prayer. We're not we're not just a prayer ministry, but there's not a ministry without prayer within Converge. So we're here to listen. We're here to help. If there's one area that's really discouraging or hurting you, or you're not fruitful in, I bet you we are, or we know somebody that can help you in that area. So let's conversation real soon. In the meantime, God bless you. It's a good day. God's on the move. Church is growing. People are learning generosity. Let's go out this week and make something happen for the kingdom of God. So God bless you, our dear listeners and watchers. We're praying for you. We're cheering for you. You're going to make it, and you're going to make it big by the glory of God as you continue to lead from alignment.